Watching us tonight, we're going to get right to our top story, the ongoing feud between President-elect Donald Trump and the intelligence community. It intensified again this morning in the fallout from that dubious report about Donald Trump's ties to Russia. Trump lashed out on Twitter, writing, quote, "It now turns out that the phony allegations against me were put together by my political opponents and a failed spy afraid of being sued, totally made up facts by sleazebag political operatives, both Democrats and Republicans. Fake news. Russia says nothing exists, probably released by intelligence, even knowing there is no proof and never will be. My people will have a full report on hacking within 90 days. Later on ABC's The View, Vice President Biden hit back at Trump's charges against the intel community this way.
The crown jewel of American security is our intelligence community.
That's right.
And everything we do, we rely upon those 16 different agencies, and to diss them and dismiss them.
Yeah.
It really plays into Russia's hand.
Joining us now with reaction, Anthony Scaramucci, who just today was named advisor to the president and incoming White House Director, Office of Public Liaison. Anthony, first of all, congratulations.
Eric, great to be here. Hey,
there you go.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Talk to me a little bit about what's going back and forth with the intelligence community. I've said on this very show that I think it's been politicized. The intelligence community has been politicized. Does Donald Trump think that this is all about politics?
Well, I would probably say that he thinks that there are aspects of it or slices of it that may be politically charged, or maybe some people that are doing things that are politically motivated. I think the president-elect has an enormous amount of respect for the intelligence community. In his daily briefings, I think he's getting a plethora of information that he finds very, very useful in terms of diagramming out what our national security policies will be, what our diplomatic policies will be, and so forth. But I do think that there are issues here, Eric, that we have to look at as Americans, where if we're going to politicize the justice system, which we know that Jeff Sessions will never do that, or politicize aspects of the intelligence community, we know the president-elect will not do that, Director Pompeo will not do that, or General Flynn. And so I'm just here to say to you that we're looking forward to the new administration. We're looking forward to working with all those people. You and I played on a lot of sports teams. We're very team-oriented. We need to pass the ball, open ourselves up to each other, and do what's right for the American people.
Let's talk a little bit about James Comey. The lead editorial in the Wall Street Journal today suggested that James Comey should resign. If he doesn't resign, incoming AG Jeff Sessions should ask for his resignation. If he won't further, then Mr. Trump should fire him. Allow me just to do this, though. It's been a political football going back and forth. The Democrats are saying get rid of him. All of a sudden, Josh Earnest today in the briefing room said, no, we have full confidence in James Comey. Where is Donald Trump on the FBI and Comey?
First, I want to speak personally about James Comey. I have an enormous amount of respect for me personally. I do think he's a man of integrity. I think as it relates to the situation, I think the president-elect is probably going to look at it very carefully. I think they've interacted a few times. One of the things we both know about President Donald J. Trump is that he can take measure of a person pretty quickly. And what I also love about him, he's going to make his own decision. He's not going to let the Wall Street Journal editorial board make that decision, or the partisan politics in Washington make that decision. He's going to take measure of the man himself, and then he'll come to a conclusion on that. But here's something about James Comey that I'm pretty confident of. If someone were to ask him to resign, he would do it because he's a great American, should it come to pass. My guess is, I honestly don't know. This is up for the president-elect to make that decision and to do that analysis.
Another intelligence community figurehead, James D.N.I. Clapper, has been in the news. He's making the news lately. Does President-elect President Donald Trump have the confidence in Clapper to be the right guy for the DNI?
Well, we're talking to Senator Coates, I think, as you know, and so I would say to you that he probably has confidence in him. Let's put it this way. A new administration is going to be in town. You know and I know that when you get new leadership, good things can really happen if you set the culture right. I've had a phenomenal experience inside of Trump Tower over the last 60 or 70 days or so. This man is a phenomenal leader, and even people that are not operating at full efficiency when they have a phenomenal leader can pick it up a notch. We both know that from the businesses that we've run. So I'm hopeful that with the new administration, you're going to see an uplift in a lot of facets of the government.
A lot of big question that people have right now is Mr. Trump's relationship with the media going forward. There's been some contention going back and forth over the last couple of days, weeks. We've talked about it. BuzzFeed publishing that full 35-page unconfirmed, not fact-checked, never double-sourced dossier that they call it. Your thoughts? What will that relationship of the Trump administration be with the media?
Yeah, I think some of these news organizations have a hard time grabbing eyeballs. They're not the O'Reilly factor or Bill O'Reilly, and so what they do is they say nonsense and offer to get some attention. What I love about the president-elect, he's willing to call them out on it. He's also willing to go directly to the American people, right over the top of the mainstream media, Eric, to let the American people know what is going on. And the American people, I think, have lost patience with this aspect of the news. I think they've grown tired of people that are speaking in falsehoods. And so I really admire him for doing that. I think it's very important, because it's part of his brand, to be that honest and that authentic.
But do you hold them even further accountable? In other words, Ben Smith, the editor-in-chief of BuzzFeed, literally wrote a note, a memo to his staff saying, hey, these are unsubstantiated allegations, by the way, and then he went ahead and published them anyway. Is there a lawsuit coming BuzzFeed's way?
I don't know. I have to leave that up to the president-elect to decide. I can tell you my personal experience with Ben is it hasn't been favorable. There's a level of dishonesty about the BuzzFeed process. They seem to think that they're more important than the facts and the objective standards of journalism. And so for BuzzFeed, they're losing a lot of credibility.
NBC dropped $200 million into BuzzFeed in 2 years in a row, $400 million investment. Is it time that NBC apologizes, clarifies the relationship?
I find it hard to believe that they're not embarrassed by that investment at this time. I'm hoping that this sort of stuff is the bottom. You and I have traded markets for 30-plus years. I'm hoping fake news is hitting a low at very high volume, Eric, and hopefully we'll start to see it clear up in the coming months. But it's really not fair to the President of the United States, and it's not fair to the American people.
Fake news, let's talk about that. How do you put it? How do you put that down? How does the Trump administration put down the fake? Obviously, fake news has exploded in the last few months. How do you end that? How do you turn that curve?
First of all, there's a lot of reliable news organizations, yourself included. And so what we have to do is we have to get our message out. We have a terrific communications team. Sean Spicer, I know you know very well. I think Ryan Previs is working on the strategy and taxes alongside of Steve Bannon. The president-elect is the tweeter-in-chief, the communicator-in-chief. He's the commander-in-chief. And I think we're going to get our message out there in a way that the American people are going to enjoy. One of the things I love about the president, he knows how to unbundle things, Eric, and explain things to the common person. I find sometimes all of us, myself included, we get into that Washingtonian speak, which makes people's eyes glaze over. I've never seen that from the president-elect.
Before I lose you, I only have about a minute or so. Your new title, advisor to the director, advisor, counselor.
A lot of titles in there, but yeah.
So I'll throw it out here.
Team player.
I'll throw it out here. It was thrown around this morning. Valerie Jarrett.
Yep.
Similar to the Valerie Jarrett role with President Obama.
Well, listen, I said this morning that I think that was sort of overstated. You have to remember Valerie Jarrett is super close to President Obama. I feel close to the president, but there are many people close to him. He's been phenomenal to me. I have a great relationship with him. And I said this morning, I'll say it to your viewers, I want the American people to see the president-elect the way I see him and the way his staff sees him. He's a kind-hearted, generous guy, somebody that really has the interest of the American people at heart. And I'm hoping that we can deliver that message on his behalf.
Will he still tweet from the POTUS account?
I think so, yeah. Okay. I mean, it's going to be up to him.
All right. We're going to leave right there, Anthony. Thank you very much. Up next, another point of view from the other side of the aisle, and later, Paul Ryan slamming sanctuary cities, but also assuring illegal immigrants that mass deportations won't happen. Is this the right answer to the immigration chaos? Stay tuned. In the Impact segment tonight, reaction to our interview with Anthony Scaramucci and President-elect Trump's escalating fight with the intelligence community and the press. Joining us now from Washington, California, Congressman Brad Sherman, a Democrat. Now, Congressman, I want to get to your reaction to the previous segment, but first, you were at a very contentious meeting today with FBI Director James Comey. Here's how one of your Democratic colleagues described it.
I can just report that my confidence in the FBI director's ability to lead this agency has been shaken.
Was it a heated exchange at any point between lawmakers?
There was some heat. There was some heat, a lot of unanswered questions.
So, Congressman Sherman, can you tell us what happened at that meeting?
Well, there are two contentions around Mr. Comey. One was, of course, 11 days before the election, his statements about Hillary's email. That had an important impact. Whether he handled that correctly or not, most Democrats do not believe he handled it correctly. The second issue was, through what steps did he inform the Democratic National Committee that they had been subject to a major hack? Debbie Wasserman Schultz was there and made the point that no one called her personally, and perhaps they did little more than call the 800 number where you get a volunteer. So we're going to get Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who headed the DNC, is going to get a briefing as to what efforts the FBI made to really bring it to the attention of top DNC personnel that they had been subject to this incredible hack.
And Congressman, I'll just read a couple of quotes from some of your colleagues on the Democrat side who were at that briefing on the way out. I no longer have confidence in him, meaning James Comey. That's from Tim Waltz, a Democrat from Minnesota. I'm extremely concerned, that's Elijah Cummings, Maryland's Democrat. And I'll just say I'm very angry, California's Mark Takano, one of your colleagues from California. I mean, literally, is everyone this angry about the way that the DNC was notified about the information, about the emails, and this is what's really making everyone that crazy, losing confidence in the director of the FBI over this email notification to the DNC?
Well, Comey's got a 10-year term, and I think that many Democrats would prefer him to anyone likely to be appointed as his replacement. As to whether the FBI made a serious effort to inform the top executives of the DNC, Comey has promised a detailed briefing, but has admitted that they never called the number one person, who is Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Whether they contacted the general counsel or other executives, we're going to have to see. So that's an issue. Obviously, his statement 11 days before the election is controversial. I have some level of faith in James Comey, and probably more faith in him than, say, General Flynn, who has been appointed by the president to be his national security advisor.
Are your colleagues suggesting that they're concerned about the efficacy of the FBI?
They're concerned about two important decisions that Comey made, and that has at least diminished Democrats' confidence in him. In my case, I have some level of confidence in the director.
Okay. Did you hear anything in that meeting that gave you concern or pause about the incoming Trump administration?
Well, it needs to be investigated, and we have no idea whether it will lead, is whether there was any American who was involved in supporting or coordinating this Russian hacking. I'm old enough to remember Watergate. That was a matter of burglarizing the files of the Democratic National Committee. Back then, files, it's hard to remember this, were in metal cabinets in manila folders. Now I see another burglary, a cyber burglary, because files aren't in cabinets. They're on email servers. So if any American was involved in that, that's important. The fact that the intel community would give some credence to this 35-page dossier is reason enough to say, let's run to ground all of the charges. Let's take it seriously. That doesn't mean it should have been leaked, but it has been.
Before I lose you, I only have about 30 seconds. One of your colleagues, John Lewis, had claimed that the Donald Trump presidency is not legitimate. What say you?
Donald Trump was elected president. That was not my choice. There were many issues in how that race was run. I've seen issues in other campaigns as well, and we accepted the legitimacy of George W. Bush, notwithstanding the fact that they didn't do a full recount. I think that Donald Trump is going to be president.
Very good, Congressman. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Next on the rundown, Paul Ryan tells an undocumented mom not to worry about a deportation force coming after her, but also says sanctuary cities will not be tolerated. What to do about the immigration mess? Moments away. In the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, immigration chaos. During a town hall event last night, Speaker of the House Paul Ryan made clear how he'll deal with sanctuary cities.
Sanctuary cities are a violation of the rule of law, and they are not to be tolerated. We agree with that 100%. And that means if you want federal assistance, you're not going to get it. You got to enforce the law.
But Speaker Ryan also appeared to take a softer stance on mass deportations and DACA, a policy put in place by President Obama that protects illegal immigrants who entered the U.S. as minors.
If DACA gets repealed, my daughter will lose her mother, and I'm sorry, she will lose her mother. And I want you to know that DACA has helped me. What do you think that I should be deported? And many of families in my situation should.
No. If you're worried about, some deportation, force coming on, knocking on your door this year, don't worry about that.
Joining us now from Washington, Katrina Pearson, former Trump campaign national spokesperson, and from Fort Worth, Texas, immigration attorney Francisco Hernandez. I'll start with you, Katrina. How are you guys? So Paul Ryan seems to be all over the place with me, in my opinion, on this one. In one instance, he says sanctuary cities, if you don't abide by federal law, we're going to cut off federal funding. But then he says this other federal law that we're talking about, don't worry about that one.
Well, I mean, where do we start here? I mean, this is interesting because one has to raise their eyebrows, Eric, when the sitting House Speaker makes a policy promise to a non-citizen residing in this country, particularly one that's in direct contradiction to the election results, not just in the country, but in his home state. More importantly, unless this is the Speaker's way of wanting to introduce legislation to codify this piece of Obama's legacy, on January 20th, there will be a new president, and that will be Donald Trump. And he's the only one that would have authority over that executive order.
Francisco, how can we take Paul Ryan seriously if on one hand he says, don't worry, DACA, you can stay. On the other hand, he says, we're going to be tough on sanctuary cities. How do you trust that? Where do you go with that one?
Well, number one, as Ms. Pearson noted, the DACA, the executive order, is going to be up to Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump revokes it, it means it was a valid order. So that's a whole different mess. As far as the sanctuary cities, I repeat to you, we've had this argument before. There is no such thing as a sanctuary city. But if he's signaling,
my friend,
no, there isn't. But if he's signaling that the Senate and the House,
I mean, if you're a city, if you're a mayor who tells your police department not to turn over illegals that they catch to ICE, that is by definition a sanctuary city.
The point of the matter is, do police officers have the necessary training to make those determinations? And even the Department of Homeland Security doesn't want local departments enforcing immigration law. Now, if we're going to pass a law that says they all have to abide by immigration law, then we're going to have to fund it. That's an unfunded mandate. What is that going to cost? There is no such thing as a sanctuary city. The Department of Homeland Security can go into
you are so down a rabbit hole right now, Francisco. Go ahead, Katrina. I still contend there are municipalities in this country who say, don't turn over illegals that you catch.
Well, that's true.
They don't have to.
That's true, but Francisco, why do you need a law to tell law enforcement to enforce a law? I mean, that's the purpose of this discussion. There are sanctuary cities.
Right.
The legislation is titled sanctuary cities, and there are too many of them in this country. We have laws that need to be enforced because what we left out of this discussion is Marianne Mendoza, the mother that spoke to Paul Ryan prior to this mother, whose son was a police officer that was killed by a repeat offender. There was no promise to her that we were going to make sure that this wouldn't happen to a family here in the United States, and that's who we should be making promises to.
But you know what? But that had nothing to do with sanctuary cities because immigration could have picked them up in L.A. and in San Francisco.
All right, stop.
But let's keep our eye on the ball.
Francisco, what about Kate Steinle? Here's a perfect example where the perpetrator was arrested 7 times, got released. Kate Steinle is dead. Ask that family if there's a sanctuary city.
I agree with you. You know what? And immigration had a hold of him when he was in L.A., and they let him get transferred to San Francisco. And when he was released from San Francisco, they give themselves 48 hours to go pick him up. But you know what? The Department of Homeland Security doesn't have to have the city's cooperation. They have the same access to the same fingerprint banks.
Well, you know what? I'll leave Katrina with the last thought. But Katrina, if the city doesn't cooperate, then they, as Paul Ryan points out, hey, what about pulling some federal funding?
Oh, absolutely. There should be consequences. There absolutely should be consequences for that. And Francisco, you're wrong. Sanctuary cities is a part of the problem because that is a huge magnet. The only reason they come back is because they know they're safe in those cities, and that's when Americans get hurt.
Safer than Mexico, for sure. But are we saying that there will be congressional action on immigration reform this year?
I don't know. Francisco, I think they need to figure it out. Either you're okay with it or you're not. But right now, it's kind of all over the board right now. Got to leave right there, guys. I'm sorry. Katrina, Francisco. Francisco. Thank you very much. Coming up, Democrats in desperation mode trying to cast new doubts on the legitimacy of Donald Trump's election victory. We're going to take a very hard look at that one right after this. In the Factor follow-up segment tonight, President-elect Donald Trump and Democrats' refusal to accept his election victory. Listen to Hillary Clinton's former press secretary.
Every day there are new developments, new shoes dropping, so to speak, that call into question the legitimacy of his win.
Are comments like that just a strategy to undermine the president-elect?
I don't want to impute a general conspiracy here, but it looks as if the Democrats, on their way out the door, are trying to leave behind as many landmines as they can to at least cast doubts on the legitimacy of the Trump victory. All of a sudden, as we have seen, they've gotten interested in Russian cyber warfare, which the administration appeared to be extremely nonchalant about until they lost the November election.
Joining us now from Washington with reaction, Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein, and with us in studio, Boston Herald columnist Adriana Cohen. Richard, I'll start with you. So first it was the Russians, then it was Breitbart, then it was James Comey, then it was the voting booths. Oh, then it's the Russians again. I mean, honestly, can't you just get over it? She lost.
You know, it's a funny thing, Eric, that we have Donald Trump complaining about questioning his legitimacy, who got his political standing as a birther, the lead birther questioning Obama's legitimacy. So it's a bit rich.
Wait,
that's
where you find that he got his political standing from that moment, in history?
I'm saying he got his traction early on. I'm not talking about in the campaign. I'm talking about 5-6 years ago as the lead birther.
There were people, talking in the 80s that he was going to run for president. Hold on, let me bring Adriana in. Adriana, the numbers are out now. I think she spent $1.2 billion on this campaign, and all she had to do was win either Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Michigan, and throw in Wisconsin as well. She lost all of those.
Exactly. And, you know, the reason why she lost is because she was a flawed candidate who ran a bad campaign. This isn't about Russian hacking. This is about the cloud that hung over her head with the FBI investigation. She mishandled classified information. She let 4 men die in Benghazi that should never have died. I mean, the list goes on and on. The shady Clinton Foundation, the pay-to-play that was going on. She didn't, you know, run a good campaign in these battleground states where she needed to be. And so she should only be blaming herself. And, you know, I think that Democrats are an embarrassment right now, that they won't accept the Donald Trump administration and victory. They should be building bridges, not trying to delegitimize this election.
Richard, is Donald Trump a legitimate president now, or in a week?
There are 2 things he could do to prove his legitimacy. One is have an independent fact finder that puts under. Hold on a second.
Didn't he get 306 electoral votes? That doesn't legitimize Donald Trump's presidency.
And incidentally, next time, Eric, he says he had this great victory. When you lose by 3 million and you're 46th out of 58 in the electoral vote,
you guys always do this.
That's not so great.
Take out California. He beats her. She can have California.
Look, the fact he needs to have somebody put under oath Paul Manafort and Roger Stone and Carter Page and say, did you deal with the Russians during the campaign or not? Because when Donald Trump called on Putin to steal data from the DNC and from Hillary Clinton, and then 100 times on the stump referenced the very data.
Richard,
and
Richard, you are spinning in the no-spin zone. That was a joke. He was saying, ha, 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 hey, maybe you can find those 55,000 emails that Hillary Clinton deleted. Remember that? That was a joke.
You think it was a coincidence that WikiLeaks dropped all those emails an hour after the Access Hollywood tape came out? Is that a coincidence? You're
good at spinning. You're good at spinning. Is that a swivel chair you're on right now? Adriana, so tell us, bring us up to speed now. Look, I get it. Robbie Mook, he was part of the campaign. I get it. Brian Fallon, part of the campaign. I get it. Blame anything because it's on them otherwise. But the other Democrats blaming all these other fake news stories.
Exactly. It's so much hypocrisy. Because can you imagine if Hillary Clinton won and then Republicans were trying to delegitimize her win? They would be attacked like there's no tomorrow. They'd be calling men who try to delegitimize her a misogynist, a sexist. It's just incredible double standards. Hillary Clinton had a failing message. Her only message on the campaign trail was basically to attack Trump, but she didn't have her own inspiring message. And so many Democrats, you know, jumped over to Trump camp and voted for him. she wasn't able to capture even the female vote. A lot of women voted for Donald Trump. So she really has to stop, blaming others and take responsibility for her loss.
I don't hear her doing it. I hear all her staffers doing it. I've got to leave it right there, Richard and Adriana. Thank you very much. Directly ahead, President Obama claiming he hasn't had a single major scandal in his White House. Seriously? Right back with that in a minute.
The critical decisions, key political moves, and a new editor, the #1 cable news show for 16 years and counting.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. And in the second unresolved problem segment tonight, scandals and the Obama presidency. In an upcoming interview with 60 Minutes this weekend, President Obama makes a stunning claim.
You didn't change Washington.
You know, I changed those things that were in my direct control. I mean, look, I'm proud of the fact that with 2 weeks to go, we're probably the first administration in modern history that hasn't had a major scandal in the White House. But there were big stretches while governing where even though we were doing the right thing, we weren't able to mobilize public opinion firmly enough behind us to weaken the resolve of the Republicans to stop opposing us or to cooperate with us. And there were times during my presidency where I lost the PR battle.
So no major scandal during his presidency. It was all just PR problems. Seriously, a few people may disagree. Joining us now from Washington, Fox News contributor Richard Fowler, and from Palm Springs, California, Rick Grinnell, former spokesman for the U.S. ambassador to the UN. Fowler, it's a PR problem and nothing to do with just a PR problem. So it was a PR problem when he called ISIS the JV team while Americans were being beheaded.
That's not a scandal.
Homegrown terror, San Bernardino, Fort Hood, Orlando. These are all just PR problems.
Yeah, no, I think what the president was saying there is he has never been involved in a scandal. Well, how I would define a scandal is an impeachment like Bill Clinton, or maybe the Iran-Contra like Reagan, or maybe, the vice president's chief of staff going to jail for releasing the identity of a CIA covert operative, as in what George Bush did.
No, so you define it as either a sex scandal or a dealing that gets exposed, a secret dealing.
Exactly, that's what scandal means.
Not people dying, Americans. Rick Grinnell?
Yeah, look, I think the Democrats are rightfully pleased that they finally have a party leader that doesn't have a personal scandal, because we've had too many Clintons leading the Democratic Party. But from a policy scandal, from a government scandal, from a mismanagement scandal, there are plenty. Let me just read you some that I wrote down in the green room just in a matter of seconds. Obamacare, IRS targeting, Syria red line, Benghazi lies, Hillary's personal server, Bo Bergdahl, VA scandal, Solyndra, Iran ransom payments, sanctuary cities. These are all management scandals of the president.
Richard?
Management scandals? You're just making words up, Rich. I mean, listen, this is one of the last nights on television I would actually have to defend the sitting president of the United States. And I got to tell you, none of those are scandals. I'm sorry.
Rick, hang on one second. I know you're going to jump in, but you don't think Benghazi is a scandal for Americans being killed? At least two could have been saved had they acted quickly.
Eric, I would argue that Benghazi was a mishap. It was awful. It was, but I wouldn't argue that it was a scandal.
Let me throw one more out there. One more. The cops being killed. There are 5 cops being Dallas
and you're
cops
blame
being shot.
The president for committing a scandal because 5 cops got killed in Dallas by a maniac?
Not putting down the anti-cop movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, and cops being killed. Okay. I find that scandalous.
Wait, Eric.
Richard, let me just jump in here for a second, Richard. What I think is a scandal is when there are massive failures and the leader cannot admit that, and then we have multiple news cycles where the facts roll out and the leader still cannot admit that. That is a scandal.
That's not
and
a scandal.
All of these that I listed are scandals.
That's like saying that George Bush, because 9/11 happened under George Bush's watch, that's a scandal. That's not a scandal. Just because these 4 Benghazi guys died,
those
that's
are not
a scandal.
management failures that he doesn't admit.
Everybody knows that there are No, Rich, come on. During 9/11, there were a lot of folks that argued that George Bush could have been better at protecting America from the terrorists, and we didn't call it a scandal. So
those
stop calling it a scandal.
Those are political arguments, but there are no facts that prove that.
Rick, please hold on a second.
There's no facts to prove that you guys that you're arguing.
Listen to me, por favor. Listen to me. The proliferation of homegrown terror, could that be considered a scandal?
No.
Why not? Americans dying.
People radicalizing
No, but President
on
Obama
the internet
specifically
has
said
nothing
it's
to
not
do
happening.
with the president
JB's
of the
the ISIS
United
team.
States.
It's not happening here. He looked the other way. That's scandalous. No.
First of all,
I would call it genocide in Syria a scandal.
Oh. How is the genocide in Syria a scandal? So would we call the genocide in Sudan a scandal under George W. Bush?
Well, it's a total failure of President Obama to react
these
to
arguments
Syria.
make
There
no
have been
sense,
so many
Rich.
mismanagement problems consecutive
George
that he
Bush
can't
did
admit.
not react to Sudan. Is that considered a scandal in your opinion?
This is not about George Bush. This is
no,
about
don't
President
deflect. It's the same
Obama's
thing.
scandal.
It's the same thing. How is it different?
No.
How is it different?
What about targeting conservatives by the IRS and President Obama not admitting that? Is that
How
a
about
scandal?
the fact that under George W. Bush, the NAACP was audited 4 times? Is that a scandal? No.
We're going to have to leave it there.
That doesn't prove my point.
We're going to leave it right there. Rick and Richard, good debate. Thank you very much. When we come right back, a wild press conference, contentious nomination hearings, and a salacious but dubious report on Donald Trump and Russia. We'll have all that in review in a minute. In the personal story segment tonight, a drama-filled week for the incoming Trump administration. Grillings on Capitol Hill of the president-elect's cabinet nominees, a highly suspicious and salacious dossier regarding Donald Trump and the Russians, and a press conference for the ages where Trump got to take on one of his favorite targets.
Go ahead. No, Mr. President-elect.
Go ahead.
Mr. President-elect, since you are attacking our news organization,
not you.
Can you give us a chance?
Your organization
You are attacking our news organization.
Your organization.
Can you give us a chance to ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir,
quiet.
Can you state,
quiet.
Mr. President-elect.
Go ahead.
Can you state
she's asking a question. Don't be rude.
Mr. President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You're
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can
No,
you
I'm
give
not
us
going
a
to give you a
question?
question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
So after this week's incredible series of events, is the Trump team coming out ahead? Joining us now to analyze from Washington, Bob Cusack, editor of the Hill newspaper, and Kelly Rydell, reporter for the Washington Times. Kelly, your thoughts? That was must-see TV. Who wins in that exchange?
I think Donald Trump ultimately wins, and this is why. He has built his campaign, and a lot of his message was him versus the establishment, him versus the corrupt media. And what BuzzFeed did this week was it printed tabloid trash that confirmed the suspicions that most Americans have that the mainstream media is out to get Donald Trump. So on Wednesday, during Donald Trump's presser, he was able to go after them, and he had legitimate reason to go after them. This whole notion of printing just this salacious garbage was unfair, unjust, and Donald Trump stood up for himself and in the process stood up for his supporters and the American people.
Yeah, Bob, how do you see this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Trump showed at the press conference, I mean, he was in control. I think you're going to see this, Eric, over the next 48 years, that he's going to be fighting with the media. He thrives on it. He gets the edge on them, and without a doubt, I mean, BuzzFeed, what they did was horrible and horrible to the profession of journalism.
Yeah, and by the way, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Congress has about a 10 to 12 point approval rating, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the only one below that, only group below them, is or are the media. So he's got a very, very big, wide target to aim at. Let me do this. Let me play a shot of something that kind of blew my mind when I heard it. Take a listen to Cedric Richmond.
To have a senator, a House member, and a living civil rights legend testify at the end of all of this is the equivalent of being made to go to the back of the bus.
Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Bob. But that was Representative Richmond at the confirmation hearing for Jeff Sessions. I found that, I don't know, let me let you weigh in.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of testimony there. One from a former employee of Jeff Sessions, African-American, who praised Sessions. You know, they were talking about the civil rights struggles, which clearly there were some major struggles back then. But there wasn't, they were tying it to Sessions, but they didn't have specific instances of him being at fault. Obviously, he has said some controversial things in the past. But the interesting thing is that if you talk to Democratic senators, and I have, and Republican senators who've known Sessions for a long time, have worked with him for decades up in the upper chamber, they all like him and they respect him. They are getting pressured, though, from liberal groups to vote no. But I still think there will be some Democrats, along with all the Republicans, who will vote yes.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, so the nominees so far, how are they doing? Let weigh in on that. But I also want to point out that a lot of people on the left are saying, hey, look at some of these nominees. They don't necessarily reflect where Donald Trump was during the campaign. Mm-hmm. But then again, you know, is that a good thing? Is that refreshing to know that he was willing to appoint or nominate people who didn't necessarily yell into the echo chamber with the exact same voice that he has?
Yeah, well, Donald Trump definitely rocks the boat, right? But his cabinet appointees this week have proven that they are the ones that are calming the waters. Jeff Sessions came off as, you know, with a profound knowledge of the law and upholding the law. And Dick Durbin tried to, you know, say, are you going to be an advocate for immigration? He tried, are you going to try to use your position to influence the law? And Jeff Sessions was very clear and said, no, I will uphold the laws on the books and the Constitution. And that was a very refreshing thing to say. Even, you know, in Rick Tillerson's hearing, which I think was one of the more heated ones this week, with Marco Rubio attacking him about not calling Russian President Vladimir Putin a war criminal. I think the majority of people saw that exchange and saw Marco Rubio grandstanding. And basically, the winner of that exchange was Rex Tillerson, in the fact that the U.S. government, Barack Obama's administration, hasn't gone that far to call Vladimir Putin a war criminal. So why would an incoming Secretary of State do that? In terms of the differences that all these nominees showed, I mean, there needs to be a broad range of opinions going into this White House, and I think that this is Donald Trump's philosophy. I think that he likes that. He said today at Trump Tower that he wanted all of his nominees to go out there and show Congress what they were about and show them their personalities, and then they'll work through their differences at the White House.
All right, we're gonna leave right there, but Bob and Kelly are going to stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Donald Trump's inauguration is just 1 week away from right now. What to expect leading up to the big event in a moment. In the Back of the Book segment tonight, it's just 1 week until inauguration, and the next 7 days are undoubtedly going to be huge. Joining us now, Bob Cusack and Kelly Rodell are back. So let's take a look. What do you guys think going forward? What are we looking forward to? I'll start with you, Bob.
Busy day one. Obviously, he's going to be sworn into office, and then he's going to be signing a slew of executive orders. For example, he's going to be officially killing the TPP trade deal, be doing something on regulations, especially on Obamacare executive actions. So this Trump team wants to get off on a lot of political momentum. They're going to be very busy on day one, going into the weekend, and then, you know, one thing, Eric, about this town, Washington, is bracing for Donald Trump. A lot of people are actually fearing Donald Trump. He is going to shake up this town.
Okay, and what do you say, Kelly? Same type of assessment?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Obamacare, we know that today passed out of the House, the first step in repealing that law, and it's going to be a lot of questions around how are the Republicans now going to replace it. They did the easy part, now the hard part comes, and what type of role is Donald Trump going to play in that? We know that they're going to try to strip Obamacare through the reconciliation process, which requires only 51 votes, but they are going to need 60 votes to pass a replacement bill, and it will be interesting to see how Donald Trump cajoles the GOP senators as well as, 8 or 10 Democratic senators that he needs in order to get this major bill through.
So, Bob, the Democrats are talking. There are a lot of leftist groups that are talking about protesting. They're talking about tying things up. Some are saying they're going to not show up at the inauguration. Yeah. Take a listen to Representative John Lewis. Now, this is going to be on Meet the Press, coming up. Listen to what he had to say. See if this helps the matter.
I believe in forgiveness. I believe in trying to work with people. It's going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult. I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
Your thoughts, Bob?
Well, I mean, John Lewis is a Civil War hero, but overall, civil rights hero. But Democrats are still in denial. They're still struggling that Donald Trump is going to be sworn in. It was by the Electoral College. They mentioned the popular vote. And I just think it looks bad for Democrats not to show up at the inauguration. Many Democrats are going to show up at the inauguration. It's a small few that are deciding not to show up.
Yeah, what's the point, Kelly? Why are they not showing up? I could be wrong. I don't remember Republicans not showing up for President Obama. I could be wrong, though, but go ahead, Kelly.
It's absolutely despicable behavior. I mean, we've seen the slow walk the Democrats have done up to this point. So when Representative Lewis said today that he doesn't think that Donald Trump he thinks he's disqualified and for office, this is something that, a lot of Democrats have wanted to say for a long time. And it seems like an orchestrated move. They are absolutely losing their minds over Donald Trump's win. Listen, they had a candidate that was one of the worst candidates in Hillary Clinton, and she lost an unbelievable election. She was the worst candidate that lost so sorely. They never saw this coming, and they can't come to grips with reality. I wish everyone could come together. Donald Trump is our president. He is going to be the president of the United States. And just like Republicans wished Barack Obama well after he won again in 2012 and wanted his presidency to be successful, Democrats should want the same for Donald Trump.
Bob, I only have about less than a minute or so, but D.C., you two are both in D.C. Man, that place is going to be crazy for the weekend. But going forward, are people ready for the Trump group, the administration, to come to D.C.?
No, and I think there are a lot of Republican establishment types that are not ready for Trump, and there are some, on the left that think that, it's going to be the end of the world a week from today. I think the Republic will continue. People are really, I think, just getting a little bit too worked up over this, and it's a challenge for Trump to unite everybody, honestly.
And I agree with you, Bob. I think there's going to be some Republicans scratching their head. Uh-oh, what's this all about? By the way, you know what they say? Drain the swamp. Got to leave it right there. Bob and Kelly, thank you very much. And that's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly, who will be back on Monday. And please remember, the spin stops here because we're looking out for you.